Rightio team, let's get to some Foxfire chat. We're going to start with Autumn Glow, outstanding winner of the Epsom Handicap. She remains unbeaten. She was supported, big support. You know, there was sort of black figures when we spoke Thursday in the preview, Nico. She was sort of getting out to 220, 230 at one stage. Then she sort of at the start of Saturday, she's into $1.90. She ends up SPing $1.62. She wins the race. What do you do now with Autumn Glow if you're in the ownership?
Yeah, for me, it hasn't changed, Jules. You might remember we had this chat. Willie Do It coming out just sort of adjusted those figures as well. And then Magneteer coming out. That's why I think she was also heavily backed. But I wouldn't change anything. I'd still send it to the Empire Rose. I know it's not a lofty target, but I want to know two things. I want to know, can she travel to Melbourne? And how can she go 4 deep into a preparation? She's never been past a third up run. So you want to learn a couple of things about this next run. Now, I know she's unbeaten, so they want to protect that. The softest Group 1 target for her is the Empire Rose.
Yep.
If she can't beat that field, then you've got to rejig how you look at the autumn. You want to know if she can go to Melbourne, Julesy, because there's races for her to be won. For instance, is it the Futurity now with the Ore at the back end of the spring? The Futurity first up 1,400 metre.
Yep.
That's a nice Group 1 target for her to get against the older horses, adds value to her pedigree. I just think that's what you've got to learn. You've got to find something out about her. Now's the time to throw in the deep end in terms of travel, and you couldn't get a softer target for her to travel down and race in. And that's with all due respect to Treasure of the Moment, who may end up there. We'll have to wait and see what happens with her in the Might and Power, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd love to see her in a Cox Plate. I think she would actually win a Cox Plate. And I know we've got differing opinions on that because probably haven't got this race, the Epsom, going as high as I do, but I've got the Epsom going really, really strongly. I think she just draws a nice gate in a Cox Plate, she'd win it. It sounds unlikely that she's going to go there, and I understand the reasons that they want to protect her and look after her, but I love your idea that, hey, let's try and get her down to Melbourne and see how she goes this way of going and all that kind of stuff. But love to see her in a Cox Plate. I think she would be the winner. Talking about horses and where they're going, and we've been in the banana split sort of situation for the last 6 weeks with this horse in particular, Chris Waller, working out what to do with Aeliana. Oh, God, she just ran like a horse that screamed like she needs 2,400 metres for me.
I just thought the same thing. I mean, I don't want to say she can't win a Cox Plate off the Turnbull Stakes, but she can't win a Cox Plate off what she did there. I hate to underestimate Chris Waller because he will pull your pants down 9 times out of 10 and make you look like a fool. But she finished alongside Half Yours. Half Yours came from behind. She looked more dour. Just that last 50 metres, you and I were talking before we started filming this, the last 50 metres she was surging again. The tempo wasn't fast in the race, so she didn't have that tempo to bring her in. But she just looked like, I just think to myself, okay, so if they don't go that quick in the Cox Plate, she's probably running for 3rd, 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
And she's a big track horse as well. We've learnt that about her up here in Sydney. So I just don't know if the Valley's going to suit her either. So I think, look, here's my thoughts. You've either got to go to the Caulfield Cup and go, you know what, let's have a crack at this race. She's probably going to start second favourite there. You're back up in the Might and Power. Now, by the time some people are watching this, you'll know if she's even been nominated for it.
Yep.
Maybe that's her Group 1 for the spring. Or maybe she goes to the Spelling Paddock. And maybe you just look after her like they've been talking about all along, because I just think that Cox Plate's going to be a tough one for her to win, mate. What about you?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think your last point's a really interesting one, because all through the narrative has been we want to look after her to be, an autumn horse and then a 5-year-old mare and a 6-year-old mare and whatever it might be. And that's why we're not going to the Caulfield Cup. And I think if you look at the run on Saturday, you go, if you want to look after her, maybe your idea of going to the paddock is the best one, because I don't know I just can't imagine Moonee Valley's going to suit her, as you've rightly summed up. I mean, she's just a big track horse. She just absolutely thrives in that kind of environment. And I'm not saying Caulfield's a big track either. It can, it brought her undone in 1,000 guineas last year. This time last year, she sort of didn't get around that bend and still nearly won. So, it's going to be fascinating to see what they end up doing with Aeliana, but I'm sort of with you. That run didn't scream Cox Plate winner in the Turnbull Stakes, that's for sure. Talking about the Cox Plate, just quickly talking about.
I think the Tancred's her race in the autumn, mate. Yeah,
the old BMW, absolutely. Yep, totally agree with that. The Cox Plate, Via Sistina still favourite. I'd see the team at PointsBet are taking her on compared to some of the other joints. I think some of the other joints have got a 2 in front of Via Sistina's name, whereas PointsBet are leaning a little bit more braver and have sort of got a 3 in front of her name, but she is still holding favouritism. If you were running a book right now, would she be favourite in yours?
I think she'd probably be co-favourite with Sir Delius. She still brings that SP, but at some point that SP's got to disappear. The market's holding on to that big Cox Plate number from last year and the tight SPs that she keeps having. And it's sort of like this, it's like one of those weird political policies that makes absolutely no sense. Or like when the global financial crisis hit, you ever see The Big Short? Yeah. They're talking about CDCs. And the point I'm making here is it's self-perpetuating. It's like because she started short over here, she's starting short again today.
Yeah.
But then how many times does a horse have to perform below that SP for you to go, okay, well, that SP is not actually a true reflection of her chances anymore. And I think that's going to kick in pretty quickly. Delius can't do anything more. Yeah. He's unbeaten in Australia bar one run where he was wide without cover for a little bit. And then he was only beating the bees, you know what, in a moderately run sort of mile. So, you know, he could be the best horse in the country, Sir Delius. So maybe he deserves to be favourite for a Cox Plate.
And I think around Moonee Valley as well, he puts himself into a high percentage play, Sir Delius, and that is just so crucial. And that's part of him and the charm of Sir Delius compared to all the other horses probably in the race, that he's always going to put himself into that percentage play that you want to be pushing yourself into from his speed map point of view. So especially around the Valley, he's going to be, you would think, mighty hard to beat off that performance in the Turnbull, which, as we've spoken about, obviously Hutchie and I earlier in the days, that race hasn't actually rated through the roof, but you just know that horse is going to continue to progress and improve. And we still know that the first Tuesday in November is their main aim, and he can just plot a path to get to that, but he could still win some Group 1s along the way. The other big race that's obviously on our doorstep 2 weeks away is the Everest. Did the picture get any clearer for you after Saturday?
Look, I think I'm fairly confident Jimmy Star can turn the tables on Briasa off that. I thought he was exceptional from the back. The query will be the bigger field. He's got more horses to get past, but he's going to get a more genuine tempo up on top of the speed. So obviously Kahing Rising, he trimmed up a little bit more off that, and that's because the figures out of the race weren't awesome. They weren't bad, but they just weren't off the charts, the Premier. Like, it's gone okay, don't get me wrong. So I think those in the Kahing Rising camp would be happy with what they're seeing. Lady Shenandoah beaten in the Manikato, although I think you've got to be very forgiving of that. The Premier is rated okay without being great. Really now the only horse that's sort of run really good figures is Jolie Star going into it. And I don't know if we're going to get any more intel going into the Everest. So at the moment, that's how it's looking.
The Bivark number, if he was to go there, that Bivark number
if he goes the there, race,
yeah,
it's huge number. But it was an outlier in his ratings, and the 3-year-olds up until that point hadn't done anything. So if you told me going into the Golden Rose, hey, there's going to be the second favourite for the Everest is going to come out of this race, I'd be like, come on, please. It's not going to happen. But yeah, he did run a number. If he goes there, sure. I think they'll go with Tempted, and I think they'll give him a gap between runs because in order to win a Coolmore Stud Stakes, I think he's got to be freshened up a little bit to have his best chance.
Yep, that's a very good shout. That was Foxfire this week. Thanks, Nick. See you soon, brother.